Nope, you just clicked it on. You want to turn it off. Good afternoon. This is Gloria with TUG, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar. Before we get started with great content, I want to remind you that if you have not yet registered for the TUG Connects 2020 conference, please do so. Please also reserve your hotel reservations because it is a full house at the Hilton Anatole in beautiful Dallas, Texas. So without any further ado, let me just share with you that we're really excited because this year our Monday keynote on March 9th is Nick Tassler. And Nick is an internationally acclaimed thought leader, organizational psychologist, and #1 best-selling author of 4 counter-science intuitive books on the art and science of making decisions, as well as leading change. So that builds on last year's great content as being an agent of change. And on Tuesday, we're really excited because Infor CEO Kevin Samuelson is going to be talking to us on the coming changes for Infor, and also from Kelly Squazzaro, who is the Infor Director of Industry and Solution Strategies on changes and distributions in the distribution industry. So done it, make sure you get over and jump on over to our TUG website, register for the conference, and also use the link for making your hotel reservations, as they are very, very limited, and we want to make sure that everyone is under the same roof. So without any further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the controls over to Keith Lalonde, who is the Vice President of Systems at PathGuide, and he's joined this afternoon by Rebecca Hagee, my trusted co-partner in scheduling everything. Keith, I'm looking for you to go ahead and share your screen, and we are on your first slide. Go ahead and take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Claire. I certainly appreciate that. Who's the one person in the warehouse that relies on hard data to track productivity, set standards, measure improvements, monitors warehouse efficiency? Experience tells us it's the same person that embraces technology out on the warehouse floor, that has the ability to inspire and grow business and helping companies remain competitive. People that fail to measure what matters can result in costly mistakes, results in things like poor customer service and so forth. With that said, we call this VIP the Warehouse Champion. My name is Keith Lalonde. I'm joined here today with a few of my coworkers, Eric Allais, our President and CEO, Rebecca Hagee, Tom, Mark, and Brian Smith. Today's topic is about the Warehouse Champion. Besides asking what that might actually represent, you might be asking yourself, why this topic? At PathGuide, what we do is we specialize in helping companies make the transition from inefficient, inaccurate dinosaurs of warehouses of yesteryear into state-of-the-art, highly efficient, accurate warehouses that are needed today in this business climate. One of the questions that I routinely get asked along the way is, for any WMS project, is, what things, or what's the single most important thing that a company can do to help ensure the success of this project? And this ties back to the notion of the Warehouse Champion. There's a couple different ways that people can view a project like this. One view that we've seen is the company that is relying on the vendor to handle all aspects of rolling out the WMS. And the other view is one that embraces more of the essence of the project. And that is, what are the goals that we are trying to solve? What is the end result that we are going for? And actually realizing that the success and what they get out of the project relies on to how much they themselves put into that. Me, myself, I'm an athlete. I've done a few triathlons, run a couple marathons, and I've hired coaches to help in various aspects of my training. But rest assured, if I relied on them to get me my results, I'd be pretty disappointed in how that turns out. At the end of the day, I get what I put into that. When you're in so many warehouses, you tend to see a lot of trends. Perhaps some people have had similar experiences, but often you can step into a warehouse and immediately get a sense for how things are running and just how the warehouse is viewed as far as being a critical aspect of the business. Companies that have their own warehouse champion, they tend to be more wildly successful in their implementations and in their day-to-day operations, which is really what we're trying to talk about today. More wildly successful in their day-to-day operations. They see better results. All right, so the agenda for today. We're obviously going to talk about the warehouse champion. I'll detail that more here in a second. We're going to talk about the importance of measuring, tracking, and paying attention to key performance indicators in the warehouses, those KPIs. And I'll be sharing some of our favorites and tell you a little bit about how we base our KPIs available to people. Lastly, we're going to talk about the physical warehouse itself. What is your warehouse saying about your company and organization? All right, warehouse champion. Who, what is he or she, right? Who is that warehouse champion? An initial stab at this might suggest that, maybe it's the warehouse manager, perhaps it's a shift leader, it's a head of, process control, could even be the director of operations. There's no real set single definition for that. Regardless of the title, the warehouse champion is a promoter. They are a promoter of people, process, and technology. At the end of the day, what makes orders get out the door is that collaboration of people doing the work, following the most efficient, the most accurate processes available, and these days utilizing technology to be as successful as possible of that. We often see that advancement opportunities in an organization, the warehouse especially, often is just based off of seniority or what is just really a matter of convenience. The warehouse manager leaves, you need to promote somebody. John's been here forever. He's the next guy up. And what I would like to stress is that this concept of having this warehouse champion, this expert, it's actually a very vital role. And with that, there has to be a lot of consideration that goes into that. Because what we're really talking about is finding the best recruit, the best person with the skill sets or the ability to be groomed into what is a very important position. These days, you can go to college, colleges, universities, they offer a degree in logistics and efficient distribution and so forth. And there's a reason that this takes place. Another key aspect in this notion of a warehouse champion is that this person's voice needs to be heard in the right areas. They're an equal participant in the C-suite, if you will, when it comes to discussions that affect the warehouse. So for example, another question will be asked is, help us be successful when we, do this change. One of our first things that we try to help identify early on is that the right people are included in the decision. So if you imagine the functioning warehouse, maybe you've got this individual as a warehouse champion, you're looking at rolling out a WMS or perhaps upgrading and moving to something new, state of the art, then this person and their voice needs to be part of that buying decision itself. The more inclusive you can be when making these types of decisions, the better the results you'll have. The more that people realize they hear their voices being heard, the more they feel appreciated, and they're having buy-in, they're having some say into what system gets selected, and really most importantly is at the grassroots they understand what the goals and objectives of this transition is going to be. And so you want these people, you want the entire workforce, but specifically this person needs to be on board. Additionally, this person, with them understanding the goals and objectives and coming from the warehouse perspective, they're going to bring some really good and important insight, perhaps that might be overlooked without seeking this person's input on this. So there's vital insight to be gained. With that, this warehouse champion, they need to have daily contact with the workforce, and so that gets back to is it the warehouse manager? Well, let's talk about that for just a second. In some cases, yes, the idea of working managers out on the warehouse floor, interacting with employees, providing guidance, providing training, making sure that things are being used the way they should. That's where that type of thing happens. Additionally, in working side by side with people, you have the opportunity to ask the end users themselves, how can we make this better? Is this working right? Is it easy enough? And what insight can you get there? There's no better way to wring the most benefit out of a system than actually getting the input from the end user of the system and making sure that's accounted for. And then additionally, often the best ideas come from those people all together. If a person asks an initial question and it's too far up the chain that it's being asked, often the answer that's given is, we've always done it a certain way, therefore we have to continue to do it a certain way. And so we need to be able to get at those other ideas and be open to utilizing those. So I've now touched on the concept of being a leader, right? And so a key trait of your warehouse champion is going to be that individual that leads by example. My little graphic that I have up here, shows graphically the difference between a leader and a boss, right? And the graphic, the boss is at the top. It doesn't show that he's got a whip, but he's clearly directing work that needs to be done, telling the lowly workers below what needs to happen. And if you contrast that with the leader on the bottom, that person's actually pulling the rope, right? They're actually pulling their share. So what are some other differences between a leader and a boss? A leader coaches individuals, right? Maintains dignity and so forth. That boss, just like that person on the top of the picture, they're simply directing people, telling people what to do. Definitely different things. Leaders tend to inspire individuals as opposed to demanding, results from people. It's all about getting the best, out of your people, process, and technology. It's about getting the best out of that. And so the way to do that is to have people themselves want to do this, want to use the system, want to follow, the processes, want to service, your end customer the best that they can. They care about your reputation in the business. I really like this one. Leaders tend to always be open to learning. One of my favorite quotes is, when you're green, you're growing, and when you're ripe, you rot. And think about that for just a second. When you're green, you're growing, and when you're ripe, you rot. All right. So the leader is always looking for opportunities to learn something new, try something new, and so forth. The boss tends to be that person that knows it all. Well, that's a pretty narrow place to be. And then another good one that I like is characteristic of just, some of the best bosses that I've ever worked for. They have a lot of empathy, right? when we go in, and one thing that our software provides is a lot of visibility and insight as to who's doing what, where they're spending their time, the errors they're making, and so forth. And so it is very important to me that I emphasize that visibility is the most important part of that. Once you know, for example, maybe you're looking at pick rates and who the most efficient pickers are, right? And once you see, you know, who is doing really, really good and who's not doing really, really good, it is real easy, and it is important to get in and look at the lower performers to understand why they don't perform at the same level as the other workers. And so two ways to do that. One is to go in there, pull Johnny aside and tell him that he's only picking at 30 picks per hour and everybody else is picking at 60 and he better pick it up. That's one way to do that. The other way is to go out there, spend some time with Johnny, walk the floor with him, see how he's using the system, and see firsthand that Johnny has a broken wheel on the cart. His wireless device has broken antenna, is dropping off the network and always having to log in. And the whole key behind that is that leader is somebody who's going to take the time to look for and try to understand a person's situation before making any sort of judgments on that. It really comes to, you know, walking the walk, you know, walk in my shoes before you judge where I'm at. Now, when it comes to, you know, training and coaching and things like that, not everybody's cut out for that. They might not have those skills, at least initially, but I touched on the ability of, you know, being able to recruit, train, grow, nurture this type of individual. So if you have that person, getting back to the baseball analogies here, you know, you want to call somebody up for the minors, right? You know, what are you looking for? Well, at the end of the day, you want to see results, and you want to know that the person that you're going to invest in has the potential for that. That's really what you're looking for. All right, if you're going to train, if you're going to, you know, coach, you have to know what it is that you're talking about. So this person needs to be a subject matter expert. We go back to looking at the WMS implementation. A person's going to learn a new system. They probably don't know anything about it in the beginning, but how do they go about and learn that material inside and out, understand it, ask questions, gain a better understanding. These are things that are critical. You have to know that in order to turn on and train somebody else. I talked about walking the floor. Again, understanding how product flows, all of these things, they need to understand that. This person is a promoter of continuous improvement, and by knowing it inside and out, you begin to see where those opportunities are. They're not that stranger to the warehouse floor, and as that promoter, again, over the course of time, you tend to zero in on the most efficient processes and the highest accuracy rates and so forth. At the end of the day, if you don't know what you're teaching, you're not going to be a very good teacher. All right, this person embraces technology. They understand that technology is simply a means to get the, a way to get the job done, right? There's different ways to do it. Pen and paper, the old way of doing it. These days we use technology. It's important that they understand what that role actually is. Again, it's about the people, the process, the technology. It all has to work together. Whoops, where did I click on? Hopefully I didn't disconnect anything. When it comes to technology, they need to be comfortable using it. This is becoming less and less of an issue as the workforce, grows up. People are more comfortable with it, but we still encounter, people that are really holding on to the old ways of doing things, and they might want to tell people that they need to use the system, but when it comes to them themselves, well, maybe it's not such a big deal. They don't need to use it. They don't need to follow a process. That's actually not the case. A key part of this is this person is making sure that the technology is actually being used. The processes are actually being followed. Going back to the context of a project, You're putting together new and updated and more efficient processes. These are built, the fundamentals of these processes are built on what were the project goals, what are the results we're trying to get at. So all these things are important, they all come into play. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't get used, then it's all for naught. And I've got to tell you, I've been in more warehouses where you go in and you see half of the wireless devices sitting on a shelf somewhere, batteries in a charger, because they don't use the system in receiving. Or they don't use it, in other areas. They limit themselves to only a couple specific areas. That's just not gonna, cut it in today's environment. Today's environment, it's all about real-time inventory control, and if you're not using the system to make sure that happens, then you're not going to have very good results. Oops. One more point that I had on that, I'd like to just throw out that this person, when they need to have an appreciation for technology itself, and that technology isn't perfect. From time to time, you're going to get thrown a curveball, right? There will be bumps along the way. Just like distribution continues to change, the software grows. As you dial in your system and processes, those you're making constant tweaks along the way. And so when you encounter those, curveballs and sliders and so forth, is the glass half full? Is the glass half empty? All right, you've got to be able to measure KPIs. KPIs, key performance indicators. How do you know what to look like? How do you know what to look at, monitor, or track? And there's a couple different ways to approach this. Many companies generally track how many orders or how many lines they ship. These days, that is not enough. So we've got a number of things that we're able to display for people. What I have on here are some of the more popular ones across the industry of distribution and warehousing. There is a group, it's called the Warehousing Education and Research Council. They're known as WORK. You're welcome to Google them. You'll learn about that. Every year they survey. I mean, they really have the pulse of distributors out there. And among other things, they monitor what are people interested in tracking. And they accumulate these results every year. They publish their findings of the top 10, the top 12 metrics that people are tracking. I've picked some of my favorites that are always high on the list. I've got them on here as well. Order cycle time is a very important one, especially for anyone who's doing any sort of fulfillment. People may be familiar with the term the Amazon effect, but even if you're not doing e-fulfillment, what Amazon has done is they have changed the expectation of everybody when it comes to ordering material. I should be able to order my order today, and by the end of the day, if I don't have an email that says, thank you for your order shipped, here's your tracking number, then that is not the experience that we've come to expect. So order cycle time is a measurement. This is tracked in hours. How long does it take from the time the order is dropped out of the system and shipped out of the dock? It is a measurement of the efficiency of the outbound side of the operations. Dock to stock time. It's a measurement of inbound operations. It's also measured in hours, and it means from the time that the trailer arrives or the shipment is dropped off, how long does it take to get it checked in and available for sale? That's dock to stock time. Lines picked and shipped per hour. That's the majority of labor in a distribution center is spent on the outbound side. It's picking orders, readying them for shipment, and tracking this and understanding where you're at is critical if you're going to maximize gains in the warehouse. I've got some metrics examples I'll pop up here in a second. And the last one is inventory accuracy. This day and age, you have to have faith. If the computer says you've got 100 widgets out there, there better be 100, and you better know where they're at. And so tracking your accuracy and your progress with that goal of 99.999% inventory accuracy that is critical. For PathGuide, inventory accuracy means the right item with the right quantity in the right bin location across the board, everywhere you go. All right, what does this mean and what can you do with it? Well, I talked about work. I mentioned that they do these surveys, they measure the respondents, and they tell you where you compare against other distributors. And it's important to understand where you stack up, at least against where you'd like to be. And so if you can think about, measuring where you're at for, lines picked per day or whatever, the results that they publish will indicate if you're in the bottom 20%, the top 20%, or somewhere in the middle. So I've actually included a couple of those. We're not going to go through all those, but I'd like to talk about that order cycle time, from the time the order drops to the time that you pick it out. And if we're looking at where a person ranks here, what I'll just point out in this specific graph here, if your goal is to be one of the better distributors out there, and let's define one of the better as saying you're above average or in the best of the best, to be in the upper 40% of all distributors, your order cycle time had better be below 5.88 hours. And the people that are the best of the best takes less than 2 hours from the time an order drops to the time the order has shipped. The tracking number's on it, it's on the UPS trailer or whatever. That's pretty darn fast. Again, getting back to looking at KPIs and measuring them, it's important to know where you're at and understand what you should be shooting for. If we look at dock to stock time, same thing. Best of the best, from the time the trailer backs up and arrives at your facility, less than 2 hours to get it checked in and available for sale. That's pretty darn fast. And here's a nice productivity one, lines and picked and shipped per hour. You better be at least 48, picks per hour or higher if your goal is to be one of the better distributors that's out there. All right, now let's shift gears and talk about the traits. I mean, what's the goal here? Well, we're trying to run the most accurate, efficient warehouse as possible. Traits of those well-run warehouses: they're clean, they're organized, people, equipment moving harmoniously. A sense of pride. Is your warehouse a showcase or is it a basket case? Real quickly, I would like to share just a success story, if you will, about one of our customers. So years ago, trying to win a new account, a customer wanted to see the software in action. We took them somewhere. They appreciated the site visit. Seemed kind of quiet, and they weren't sure how well it compared to their operations. Fast forward, long time, happy customer. We utilized them for a site visit. The prospect we took there, one of their comments was, your operations, we didn't see a lot going on out there. Seems like it's kind of slow, might not be the best fit. And our customer themselves spoke right up and say, I've got to share with you, that was our concern. And we were so busy, so disorganized. They had so much chaos that when you went out on the warehouse floor, it was obvious that there was chaos and that they were busy and all this type of thing. The moral of the story is that a well-run warehouse doesn't have that chaos, right? Stuff just happens. Everybody knows what to do. They know what the expectations are, and they do that. Those warehouses, it's obvious that there is a sense of total control that's going on out there. All right, let's talk about some home runs versus base hits. Through some pictures here. Here's a nice, clean, organized warehouse. Here's one that is less clean and organized. Some wrappers, things on the floor, some box tops that need to be cut off. I would say this is a home run. This is not quite. That might be a single or a double there. It's not horrible, but it's not amazing. Here's another example here. Again, clean, organized. Looks like there's a lot of pride in the warehouse on the left. That's a home run. This area here, ask yourself as you're looking at that, what does that represent? Is that the shipping area for this person? Is that the receiving area? Is that the returns? who knows, but it looks pretty darn disorganized, pretty darn messy. And I'll bet it's really hard if you need to find something in there. How on earth would you ever find where something was? Probably not. And then last but not least, I've been in more than one of these. I call this a swing and a miss. All right, benefits of the well-run warehouse. Higher inventory accuracy. That is probably a given. That's definitely why you want to have a well-run warehouse. Higher inventory accuracy. Lots of things happen when inventory is accurate. You can believe the computer. I talked about that example. Pickers, when the system directs them somewhere, the inventory is actually there. They don't have to search for it. Buyers can eliminate inflated stock values, right, in quantities. Imagine no more dead stock. Imagine no fear stock or safety stock. That has ramifications everywhere. What about morale across the board? Not just people in the warehouse. Definitely people in the warehouse, but as soon as you have control over everything, orders get shipped out on time. Customer service people like that. Account reps like that. Inventory gets checked in right away. It's not lost. The quantities are validated. Accounts payable likes that all that information is accurate. You just can't emphasize how important it is with morale across the board. That translates to employee retention, right? Lower turnover. It's a pretty tough environment, at least it is here for us in the Pacific Northwest. Amazon just posted that they're hiring another, 30,000 jobs, in the area. So it's a tight labor market. Wouldn't it be great if you actually, could hold on to the people that you have, and you had lower turnover, and you didn't have to hire and train a bunch of new people? Satisfaction with your company goes up, and this is all over the board. Imagine your best, most important customer coming to visit to see, your operations, to know that you're servicing them, you're dedicated to servicing their accounts, their needs. Imagine taking them into the warehouse and showing them how organized you guys are. Or how about a vendor? You're trying to win a new line, you're trying to hold on to a line. If a vendor knows that you represent them well, and that when somebody orders one of their products, you're going to, deliver, that goes a long ways. And we talked about employee retention and recruiting. All right, we're getting near the end. If you build it, they will come. Well, what does that mean? If you put the time and energy into building strong processes, developing that warehouse champion, they begin looking at these things. The it is the setting of expectations, the dialing in, the honing of those processes, and the measuring and the tracking of the KPIs. The they in this case will be positive results. That's why we're doing this. That's why we're all doing this. Positive results, more accuracy, a smoother running warehouse, and higher productivity. Imagine the warehouse that runs itself, needs, minimal management. The workforce is well trained. They know what needs to be done. They know why they're doing it. They know why it's important. They understand their role in it. And it really relates to people helping people. For those, customers that are looking at those KPIs and they reward the workforce for meeting and exceeding those KPIs, those people that include a team aspect to those rewards, they see the highest overall payback and increases in accuracy and in proficiency. If I know that it's in my best interest to make sure that my teammates are successful, that they use the system, they know how to use it, and so forth, then it is in my best interest to help them should I see them struggling. All right, to recap, what we've talked about is the role of the warehouse champion, right? What kind of traits do they have? What are they trying to do? What's their importance? We've talked about some KPIs to measure, And not just enough of knowing where you're at, but actually how do you compare against other people? It's probably good to understand that. And then what is your warehouse saying about you? Use that to your advantage. At the end of the day, we'd like to see you hit home runs. And with that, I've reached the end of my presentation, and I think we have an opportunity for any questions. Rebecca, have we had any that have come in along the way?
Yep, I see one right now. It looks like it's a two-part question. How should warehouse safety factor into the KPIs? And then the second part of that question is, when expectations for warehouse throughput fall below targets, what are some of the best ways to remedy this?
All right, let's tackle the first one first, warehouse safety. So if you're going to spend the time to track and evaluate KPIs and set goals, they have to be smart goals that make sense, and employee safety has to be at the heart of that. So generally in warehouses, you want to set different goals and minimum KPIs based off of the material handling equipment that's being used. And what do I mean by that? If you have an area of high velocity picks, you've got people pulling carts around, it is appropriate for them to have a higher standard that they're trying to hit versus somebody who is on a man up or a forklift. The last thing you want is, the person on the forklift trying to hit 60 picks per hour, right? That'd be a disaster. They'd be running all over people. And so you want to be able to break those up, whether it's by zone or classifying, those targets by the role of the person that's in that area. And then the second part of that question was what again?
When expectations for warehouse throughput fall below targets, what are some of the best ways to remedy this?
That's a great question. So for me, the best way to start to remedy that is to go out there. In one of my earliest slides, just talked about walking the walk and having, walking the warehouse floor and understanding. And then I think in my example, I said, hey, if you see that, Johnny is, not up to par, don't rush to judgment, but instead go out there and understand. Is it a training issue? Is it a motivation issue? Is it some other, equipment type issue? I will say that one of the things that I've seen over the years as we've gone in and implemented our WMS is that with the visibility as to who's doing what, and specifically those people that are performing below everybody else, those are the immediate opportunities. And generally, there's only two reasons that a person is a low performer. They either, don't know and understand, what it is they're supposed to be doing, and you can generally fix that through coaching and training. The other is they lack the motivation or the care to, it's not important to them to be, performing at a higher level. Those individuals tend to just take care of themselves, right? You're rewarding, you're monitoring, posting, top performers. These people, if they're not motivated, they tend to, quit and go down the road and hopefully work for your competitor, and you hold on to the people that are highly motivated.
Great point, Keith. What I heard you say is it comes down to, is it aptitude or is it attitude?
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay, so we have another question, it looks like. And I think you did kind of touch on this already, but maybe you can expand a little bit more. What personality traits make a good warehouse champion?
So that's a great one. I like to focus, and perhaps sometimes too much, but I really go back to what kind of boss would you like to work for? How do you expect to be treated? When situations arise where, you've made a mistake or you don't know something, how do you want to be coached along the way? And those, the key traits again are empathy, understanding, and then the ability to have somebody that is uplifting in nature, can inspire people to want to, give a darn about, doing better, meeting the goals and performing at a high level.
Okay. And it looks like we have one more that just came in. How is progress made most visible to warehouse teams?
There's different ways to do that. And so, and I've seen it go across the board. I've seen everything from people that bring up and now I'm talking about our software itself. They bring up, the metrics dashboard and they show, the top pickers for today, where your pickers' performance is, or those of highest, scorecards, they're being the most accurate and so forth. That's one way to do that. With that comes, for some people, understandably, comes certain concerns, privacy, and all right, are you picking on Johnny if you're posting that Johnny's one of the lower performers, right? And so other ways to do that are just simply post by employee ID or so forth. We've seen people that just have regular one-on-ones or regular meetings, and they instead, coach at that level. Imagine the impromptu performance review, if you will, with the person. Hi Sally, how you doing today? How are things going? Is the system working for you? Do you have any suggestions for me? By the way, I noticed that you're in the top 5 again for picking performance or whatever. So those types of sessions tend to reinforce that you actually are interested in how they're doing, you're interested in their opinions, and it is an opportunity to reinforce that performance is important. Accuracy is important.
Fantastic. All right. Oh, one just popped up. What about shift changes? How does this change the oversight needed in the warehouse?
That is an interesting one. So when I first started, I kind of brought up and talked about, who is the warehouse champion? Well, it's completely possible that warehouse champion in a larger environment where you have multiple shifts and things like that, you probably have more than one warehouse champion. You probably have a person that is managing the day shift versus the night shift and things like that. And so now, you probably have another layer there on top where, the director of warehouse operations or the warehouse manager, whoever might initially be the warehouse champion, they're now relying on, and they have those key individuals that are managing over those specific shifts. And then depending on your ability to track your KPIs and things like that, I mean, we definitely promote tracking those individually as day shift, night shift. Those roles generally focus in different areas. Day shift is getting all of the replenishments done, stock built up, and so forth. Night shift is doing all the pick, wrapping the pallets, loading the trucks, and things like this. Whatever's appropriate.
Okay.
All right.
I'm not seeing any others.
All right. With that, I am ready to turn it back over to you.
Keith, do you happen to have a means of the best way for someone to get in touch with PathGuide, contact person, email address, phone number that you'd like to share?
Absolutely. So I can be reached out to directly. My email is Keith L, that's KEITHL, at PathGuideTechnologies.com. And forgive me, thank you, PathGuide.com. And feel free to reach out to me directly, and I can either answer a question or put you in contact with the most appropriate person.
Thank you so much to you and Rebecca for such great content shared this afternoon. It will be available for viewing 24 hours after the presentation today on our TUG landing page under the webinar tab, where we archive all of this great material for our members and their colleagues to share alike. So we thank you again, Keith and Rebecca, and we hope everyone has a great day. We hope to see you at TUG. It is coming up fast. Make sure you register if you've not done so already. And as far as last comments are concerned, well done. And as they say in Hollywood, that's a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.